What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022. Now, as of the recording of this video, this phone is unfortunately only offered by T-Mobile and Metro by T-Mobile, but with how impressive it's been so far, I am hoping we start to see it with other carriers or maybe even factory unlocked in the near future. But that being said, I'm going to be going over 5 of my favorite things about this phone to help you decide whether or not it's the right one for you. Now, as always, if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review and tips and tricks videos for it on the channel. But with that being said, let's get into it. So my first reason to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022 is the display. At 6.81 inches, this is one of the largest displays you can get in a smartphone, even larger than some of the higher end flagship phones for that matter. And this is going to be great for content consumption, of course. Whether you're streaming videos, playing games, reading, whatever you're doing, things are going to look better and be easier to see on a larger display like this. And in addition to just being larger, this display also has some great dimensions. With an aspect ratio of 20.5 by 9, we're getting a taller and more narrow form factor here. So if you're streaming a video in landscape mode, for example, or maybe playing a game or something like that, you're going to get a more immersive experience. And if you're reading or scrolling through social media, for example, you'll be able to fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. So as far as size and dimensions go, this display is pretty much as good as you can get. Now, all this being said, there are plenty of entry-level and mid-range phones that also do have really good size displays and great dimensions as well. But when it comes to display features, the thing that sets the TCL Stylus 5G apart from those phones is the quality. This display does have a 1080p resolution here, so you're going to get a nice sharp crisp image, and this is really going to make stuff like your video viewing experience quite a bit better. Now, the display technology itself isn't really anything special. It's just an IPS LCD, so not an AMOLED or anything like that. But with TCL specifically, this company originally started out making TVs, and they put that same technology into their phones, and you can really tell the colors on here look great, and the display itself is really bright, especially for a phone in this price range. There's so many mid-range and entry-level phones with the same IPS LCD technology that are not nearly as bright as this, and as a result, if you're outside in the sun, for example, the display is going to be impossible to see. But with the TCL Stylus 5G, you're not really going to have that problem. Now sure, if you're wearing sunglasses and trying to take a picture in super bright direct sunlight, then you might have some problems, but in general, compared to other phones like it, the TCL Stylus 5G has some of the best brightness, colors, and overall quality of any display in its price range. My second reason to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022 is the camera. The TCL Stylus 5G has some pretty high quality cameras with pretty much every feature you could ask for in a mid-range phone. Starting with the front here, the selfie camera is 13 megapixels, and on the phone itself, the design looks real nice. It's clean, modern, minimalistic, and goes with the rest of the phone really well. On the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So like I said, pretty much every feature you could ask for in a mid-range phone, or pretty much any smartphone for that matter. The only thing it's really missing is a telephoto lens. And the last telephoto lens I saw in a mid-range phone was on the Samsung Galaxy A72, and that phone's successor doesn't even have one anymore. So that really just goes to show, as far as cameras you find on smartphones, this phone has pretty much everything. Now, it's one thing to have all the features, and it's a completely different thing for them to actually work well. But I would say with the TCL Stylus 5G, these cameras actually are pretty high quality. To give you an idea of what the camera can actually do, here's some photos taken with the main rear camera. Now, are these photos anywhere near as good as a $1,400 flagship phone? Definitely not. And if you're really going for that professional level, you are going to have to get a much higher end phone than this. But for a more entry level to mid-range device, I do think these photos are actually pretty good. I feel like this phone would be perfect for something like Instagram, for example, where you want photos that do look nice and you want to keep, but at the same time don't have to be DSLR quality. Now, that being said, again, this phone does have a bunch of different features, some that do work quite a bit better than others, and depending on the specific type of photos you want to take, this phone may or may not be the best choice. So if you want to learn more about the phone's camera specs and features and how well each one works, be sure to check out my dedicated camera videos for it on the channel. But I would say for most people who are taking a lot of pictures and want a wider variety of features, the TCL Stylus 5G is going to have a great camera setup and is probably going to be one of the better choices in this price range. My third reason to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022 is the storage. With this phone, we're getting 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and especially considering the affordable price you can get this phone for, this is a lot of space. Most people are probably not going to have to worry about storage, and even if you're more of a power user, 128 gigabytes is still a lot of space to fill up, so you're probably still going to be fine. Right now, I personally have pretty much everything you might use on a daily basis on this phone, stuff like social media, streaming platforms, and even a few mobile games, and all of this is only taking up 26 gigabytes. And keep in mind, this includes the system, which is 13 13 by itself, so we really have a lot of space left here. Now I know there are plenty of people out there who use a lot more space than I do, but remember we also got micro SD card expansion here, so if you have a bunch of photos and videos for example, you can always offload those onto a micro SD card and save even more space. So in general, if you're the type to put a lot of stuff on your phone, whether it's apps, games, photos and videos, music, you name it, if you're looking for a more entry-level mid-range phone with a lot of storage, the TCL Stylus 5G is a great choice. My fourth reason to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022 is the processor. Now this phone is getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. As the name suggests, we do get 5G connectivity here, so of course you get access to the 5G network in the latest and greatest technology. And today in 2022, although it's still not the end of the world if you have a 4G phone, I feel like when you're getting a new phone, you might as well just get a 5G phone, because 5G after all is the future, and having a 5G phone is going to be more and more important as time goes on. So again, I feel like if you're going out of your way to get a new phone in the first place, you might as well just get a 5G phone. Now that being said, the TCL Stylus 5G not only of course has 5G connectivity, but we're also getting really good performance here. I've done all kinds of things on this phone, from the more basic stuff like social media and web browsing, to stuff like streaming videos and music, and even a bunch of mobile gaming, and it's really handled everything flawlessly with no issues. Now of course, compared to something like an iPhone 13 Pro Max, it's not exactly going to be that fast, but when it comes to mid-range phones, or pretty much any phone for that matter, there comes a point where adding a little bit more processing power doesn't make too much of a difference in performance, and I feel like for mid-range phones, the TCL Stylus 5G is right there. There are plenty of mid-range phones with more processing power than this, like for example the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G or the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G 2022, but in practice, when you're actually using the phone, the performance really isn't that much better. Now that being said, of course you are going to see a difference when you go to something like a flagship phone for example, but again, for a mid-range phone, the TCL Stylus 5G is really at the point where you can get through most activities perfectly fine, and unless you're doing something really high-end like playing Fortnite for example that requires a lot more processing power, you're going to have a great experience with this phone no matter what you do. Now in case you're wondering, here are the Geekbench 5 benchmark scores for this phone. Definitely real good, especially compared to other mid-range phones, but what I recommend doing is running this test on your current device and then comparing the scores to these to see whether or not this phone would be an upgrade, because depending on what you currently have, it may or may not be. Now my fifth reason to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022 is the stylus itself. Now in this day and age, there are really only a handful of phones out there that have styluses, and among mid-range phones, there are even fewer. So if you're looking for a phone that has a stylus, but you don't want to spend the money on something like a Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, then the TCL Stylus 5G is definitely a viable option. Now it's kind of debatable whether or not this stylus is actually as good as the Motorola Moto G Stylus, which you're most likely also considering if you're looking at this phone, but I will be going more into that in another video. But by itself, I do think this stylus is pretty decent. Now you're not going to be doing any actual art with it. The drawing capabilities just really aren't there. So if you do want to do any serious graphic design type stuff, you will have to spend quite a bit more and get something like a Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra. But on the other hand, if you're just using the stylus for more basic features, like taking handwritten notes, navigating, playing games, stuff like that, then I do think this stylus, while not being the best out there, is still good enough to get the job done. But those were 5 reasons to buy the TCL Stylus 5G in 2022. In general, for what it offers and for what you can get it for, I do think this phone is a really good deal. Now if you want to learn more about it, be sure to check out my full review and other videos for it on the channel. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you in the next video.